Think discipline means pressure, rigidity, or burnout? Think again. In this episode, martial arts master Jason Flame breaks it all down, showing how discipline can actually feel supportive, even freeing. From belt systems to leadership to family life, Jason shares real tools for follow through, which you can then adapt to your personal preferences. Welcome to Rise to Lead, the podcast where heart-driven leaders come together to inspire and innovate. They will share actionable tips and insights that help you lead your team more successfully, advance your career or business as a leader, achieve greater impact, and experience deeper fulfillment. I'm your host, Regina Huber, guiding you through deep conversations about leadership that's rooted in service, freedom, and the desire to leave a positive mark on the world. Are you ready to create real change in your leadership, your career, your life? Join me for a complimentary Lead and Thrive session, a 60-minute one-on-one strategy session where we will discuss your specific needs and map out the next steps to lead yourself and others powerfully. Spots are limited, so don't wait. Visit transformyourperformance.com/Lead Thrive session to book your Lead and Thrive session today. Let's work together to make it happen. Hey, welcome to the Rise to Lead podcast. Today, I am thrilled to bring to you Jason Flame from the world of martial arts. Jason, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. Good morning, at least in California. Good morning. It's 8 a.m. for me.
Yeah, and people will be listening in their own time zone somewhere. So, good morning to you, Jason.
Thank you.
So, Jason Flame is the owner of Moore Park Karate and Krav Maga in Moore Park, California. He began his martial arts journey in 1985 and opened his first school in 1996. He holds an 8th degree black belt. Sounds very impressive. You can explain that to me. In American Tang Soo Do, 2nd degree black belt in Krav Maga, and black belts in both Kitsugo, Jiu-Jitsu, and Combat Hapkido. Since 2010, he has worked as a martial arts business consultant. At age 38, he pursued his dream of becoming a pro wrestler, competing with Millennium Pro Wrestling from 2013 to 2019, becoming a Triple Crown champion and Hall of Famer. Again, welcome, Jason. Well, there's a lot of explanation here that it would need, but
yeah, there's a lot to talk about. So ask away.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I love to watch martial arts. I have never actually done it. One of my brothers used to do a lot of judo in the past. Not so sure about how much he is doing it now, but yeah. And I really like to watch it. I think it's very interesting to see the dynamics.
Mm-hmm.
We could also talk about that a little bit. And of course, I have some other questions about it. Maybe we'll leave all the different black belts for people to research on their own for now. But it does sound very, very, very impressive. And some of our listeners probably know what they mean anyway.
Well, thank you. And I know that you're a huge fan of dancing, and martial arts and dance kind of go hand in hand in a lot of ways, especially depending on the different art or the different style. So yeah, you should definitely try to take up martial arts at some point in your life, though. I think everybody, every child should learn two things. They should learn how to swim, and they should learn how to protect themselves or learn martial arts.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree that that would be an awesome idea. And they should also learn how to dance, or at least have the option. Okay. I would have liked.
And it's never too late.
Exactly. So hold that thought for sure. And by the way, yes, I also love to watch capoeira. I love that while I lived in Brazil. Watching capoeira is like, it's so elegant, it's so athletic, and it's definitely also that combination of dance and martial arts. And so that's very interesting too.
Yeah, as a kid growing up in the 80s, there was a movie called Only the Strong, and it was based on a capoeira um, family and instructor, and went to a school and actually incorporated it in a way that shows how martial arts can change young students' lives, but did it through teaching the art of capoeira. So very cool.
Yeah, it
Great
is.
80s movie.
It is. I was actually dating a capoeirista at some point while I was in Brazil for a little while, and I loved watching that stuff. Oh my God. Okay, well, let's dive right in. I have so many questions for you, and
I
of
have so
course,
many answers.
yeah, and of course, you can ask me stuff too. So, Jason, I know you talk a lot about discipline, but it's not a word everybody loves, right? So, let's look a little bit at the word discipline. And how do you define discipline in the context of martial arts? And how can we shift the narrative away from that negative connotation that it has for many people? And yeah, so that would be my first question. I'm curious about that.
Well, discipline is one of the first lessons, one of the first words that I teach every student that I start teaching in martial arts. I define discipline as doing what you're supposed to do, or doing what you know you're supposed to do without being asked or reminded. And of course, I'm speaking to kids a lot of time, but I think this applies to anybody just the same way. Is that we're not always excited to get up early to do a podcast, or we're not always excited to get up early to go and work out. But it takes the discipline to make it happen. Discipline takes over when motivation is lacking, right? And the name of my podcast, Master Motivation Podcast. I love talking about motivation, but it's only one piece of the whole pie, and discipline is a huge part of that. Right now, I'm currently doing a program called 75 Hard. I don't know if you're familiar with Andy Frisella and the 75 Hard program, but I decided to do this for 75 days. I 2 workouts a day, drink a gallon of water, read 10 pages a day, follow a diet, no cheat meals, no alcohol, which no alcohol is no problem for me because I don't drink. But there were a few things in there that I was lacking, and I said I need to get back on that program because that's where my discipline is strengthened. When I force myself to do things that I know I should do, but maybe I don't always want to do it.
Okay, so here's my question. And who determines the should? Because that's always something that I like to talk about too. And I think to me, for example, it's really important that who determines the should be myself, right? There
Right.
are certainly different perspectives on that. So what's yours?
Yeah. I mean, I think when it comes to eating healthy and working out, um, should, could, whatever word you want to use. I mean, we all have this desire to better ourselves. I think that everybody really has the desire to better themselves. And so when I say the word should, I mean, we know what's best for us. We know that we need to eat well. We know we should be working out. So, having that discipline to actually make it happen, it's just not always easy. And thinking about the result of what happens when we eat healthy and when we exercise, how are we going to feel after we exercise, or how do we feel if we don't exercise? And I think that's what kind of maybe defines or explains the word should, because I know that I'll feel better if I go to the gym. I know that I'll feel terrible and feel guilty if I don't go to the gym. So that's how I would explain that.
So it's result, the desired result that drives it, right? So if you want a certain result, there are certain steps that can take you there, or at least that's how it works to a large extent, right? And
I
so
think that's what definitely drives me is the overall result. Knowing that I'm going to feel better by doing it. I mean, it's as simple as having a task list for the day. I
Mhm.
mean, I write out a task list for the day every day, and checking off that list feels so good. But if I get to the end of the day and I haven't done anything, my discipline was lacking, and I feel, I feel a little bit guilty that I didn't get those things done because I know those were my priorities. And so checking off that list just makes me feel good. So yeah, the result of accomplishing and feeling good about yourself.
Yeah. So I do believe that, priorities was a very important word that you just mentioned, because there are things on our list that resolve themselves if we don't do them. And sometimes we just do those first because they are the easier ones instead of really looking at our priorities, right? And that would probably take us a little bit further faster.
Definitely.
Okay. Yeah. So, let's talk about some practical strategies, right? So, how can you share some specific practices you recommend for cultivating discipline that don't feel necessarily punitive or restrictive to people right away? Or how do you do that, especially also when you work with children?
Right. Well, I'll start personally, right? Discipline starts with having a plan, and then writing a list of your priorities and sticking to that plan. I mean, I've been doing the same morning routine, afternoon routine, evening routine for quite a while, right? And sometimes when I get out of that routine too, my like things just feel I feel a little bit lost without that discipline of having the structure. Wake up in the morning. I have my first 16 to 32 ounces of water. Then I have my breakfast. I have my reading. I have my social media to do. Then it's time to go to the gym. Then from the gym I go to the office and take care. And so I think having the plan is what is crucial for establishing discipline and sticking to that plan. Because if we try to fly by the seat of our pants and just get things done as we can, that's where procrastination happens. Things get left on the table, and you're looking at the same list tomorrow that you set out to do today. When it comes to martial arts and working with students, this is actually a fairly easy process to explain because we have a belt system in martial arts, and the belts are what give motivation to the students to continue, right? You train, you learn, you test, you earn a belt, you repeat that cycle, right? And so even as young as 3 years old, we have, everybody starts at a white belt, and we have certain stripes that you earn just for coming to class to remind them how important it is to come to class consistently. And then they have stripes that they earn where they learn a specific technique, and they have to earn those stripes for 3 different specific techniques. Once they have all their stripes for their attendance, they have all their stripes for their techniques, then they're eligible to test for the next belt. And once again, that cycle repeats. And if you repeat that cycle enough times, eventually you're going to work your way towards a black belt, which is the first major milestone in martial arts. And then you continue with that same path. But that kind of, building of the small baby steps that lead to small wins that lead to a big win create the motivation, which in turn reinforces the discipline, and the discipline continues to give you the results that you're looking for.
Right. So, and then those routines help keep you on track.
100%.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's one of the reasons why people have morning routines and they don't always do some. I like to mix it up personally. I easily get bored with repetition. So that's just me, it's just who I am. So I need to mix it up. However, I do understand that at least having certain, like a few elements repeat themselves in the morning, and that routine also helps me stay on track, right? Like currently, I always do my cold splashes, 100 cold splashes in the face in the morning. That's how I start my morning, and it wakes me up, and then I mix up the rest a little bit. But yeah, but that's that element that is sort of the connector in the chain, right?
And of course, every personality is driven by different things, so you like to change up and kind of disguise that repetition, but you're still accomplishing the same things. I like to do things literally in the same order every single day, because I thrive on that, constant and consistent. I think it's the martial arts in me. We do a reverse punch 5,000 times to get good at it. I mean, it does get monotonous. It does get boring. But at the end of the day, I know those 5,000 reps are going to make me have one good solid punch. So if I have my same morning routine every single day, it's going to continue to give me the results that I'm driving for. And everybody's looking for different results and has different goals. Again, the different personalities are going to determine how we're going to get there.
Absolutely. And that is the perfect segue into a question that was also burning on my tongue. And it's like a flame, right? Just a flame.
That's right. Burning.
So, yeah. So can you maybe share a personal story or how you even got into this whole world of martial arts, and then also how you determined that discipline was one of the most important, to call it something, elements that kept you there, or that attracted you, or that got out of it, or whatever it is?
Right. So, I get asked this question all the time. How did you start martial arts? And I'd love to give some like really cool story about like, I got in a fight and then I looked for a school. It was very simple. My mom said, "You're going to karate today." And I looked at her and I said, "What is karate?" I didn't know what karate was. It wasn't something that was really popular in 1985 when I started. I ended up, around the same time, saw the movie The Karate Kid, which kind of, inspired a little bit more of an interest in it. But it was really my mom who said, "Hey, we're going to karate today. We're going to try it out." And little did I know at that time that the reason that she wanted to put me in martial arts was because she always wanted to do martial arts and her parents wouldn't let her. So she had made a vow and a promise to herself that her kids were gonna do martial arts, right? So she took me and signed me up at the recreation center. I was 10 years old at the time, and I don't know if I immediately fell in love with it, but I have really distinct fond memories from early on, from 10 to about 12. I started to enjoy it. We got to be part of a big performance at a very early rank. And then I had to take a small break from karate. And then I started back at another karate school. And, I was a teenager now. I think I was 14 at the time. And the school was great, but it wasn't a good fit for me. And I decided to go back to my original school and resume what I did there. And it was when I went back that second time that I started falling in love with martial arts all over again, because I was given the opportunity to be an instructor. Well, actually, it was an instructor didn't show up for class, and my instructor said, "Hey, go warm up." And I had never warmed up the class, didn't know anything about it, had never had any formal training. But at first, I really loved kind of the spotlight of being up in the front and having that leadership role. And so I taught that class, and then that kind of happened a few more times. And then it became just regular that I was teaching and I was helping. And so it was actually teaching the martial arts that really, I think, just set the tone for literally, my entire life, my entire career, because it's actually the only job or career that I've ever had is teaching martial arts professionally. Martial arts by itself, again, I thrive on that constant discipline of having those habits and having the routine and being on a schedule. That fits my personality so well. And so I love the challenge of reaching for the new belt and going to the competitions and getting up and performing. There's so many different facets along the way, but ultimately teaching martial arts is what really set that to be my biggest passion for martial arts.
Okay, interesting. And at the same time, you were flexible enough to step up and take that role, when it was asked.
I didn't really have a choice. When your instructor says teach class, you just say, "Yes, sir."
Okay, so then let's not talk about flexibility. I was going to ask you a question about flexibility and how, being consistent, allowing flexibility in the discipline how you can find like harmony between the two, maybe, but maybe.
Well, and you know what? And that's definitely a good point. I mean, listen, we all have, Mike Tyson has a pretty cool quote, right? We all have a plan until we get punched in the face. It's just one of my favorite quotes, because that's like life hits you with different things at different times. I mean, as much as I love my morning routine, some days, Thursday, for example, Thursday kind of messes up my morning routine because I have a meeting at 7 a.m. And so that throws off everything that I normally would do. Wake up, do this, do that. And then, I have to be flexible in a lot of ways, because listen, the list is still there. The task list is still there. And another quote is that you don't slash all four tires because you got one flat. You got to be able just to roll with it and be able to, like you said, be flexible. So I think there definitely is a harmony to that flexibility and having discipline, for sure.
Yeah, I can see that. I can see that. And I'm sure you also have to be flexible oftentimes working with kids.
Yes. Right. Because every child is different. Every child learns differently. Every child has different abilities. Everybody has different interests. So, it's a topic of conversation with my instructor team and our staff, that you can't teach every class or every student, just one way. You've got to be able to connect with each student on their level to help get them to their next level, because their next level is different than the person next to them.
Exactly. Yeah, and I promised to come back to the dance. And so I see that same thing in dancing, especially also when we talk about partner dancing. We have to be really flexible to adapt to our partner every single time we change dance partners, right? We also got to be flexible, adapting from one dance to the next, and dance floor and whatnot. But I think that's the main thing here. So just like you adapt to the children, but also different clients in general, or customers, right? We do that all the time, or else we soon won't have a business.
For sure. I mean, we talk about kind of modeling behavior sometimes. When I might have a parent that comes in who's just very soft spoken. The child's going to be maybe a little bit more shy sometimes, and so they've got a little bit less energy. So if I approach them like I would approach someone like myself, with high energy and super excited, hi, how you doing, nice to meet you, it doesn't match, right? And so we have to definitely be flexible and adapt to every person that walks through our door. On the other hand, I have someone that comes in with super high energy, and if I'm walking up and super quiet or trying to be ultra professional, robot-esque, it's just not going to match it, because I think people respond differently when you can model kind of their behavior and their mannerisms and their energy.
Yeah, and here comes a question that brings up in me, because I get asked that too. So how do you then bring the two together, adaptability or flexibility, as we now called it, and authenticity, right? So I get the question a lot because I have moved a lot, and I try to, keep my authentic core, my essence at all times, while maybe taking on some stuff that I like in a place. And
Right.
Or also working with clients. Of course, it's the same principle here too with my clients, where we adapt, and in the past also as a leader at a consulting firm, where I had to adapt to the different team members and whatnot, right? So we know this from different environments, of course. And so, what would you say to that? So,
well, no, number one, I think being authentic and being yourself, and allowing people to see your personality and your take on martial arts, dance, business, is really important. Something I think I pride myself a lot on is just my social media presence. I mean, my social media presence is very authentic. I mean, it's my day. I post my wins, I post my losses, I post everything in between. When I'm meeting people for the first time, there's one thing to be professional, but I don't think that you have to put on a facade or a character to be professional, right? I mean, my son is 20 years old. I just actually had this conversation with him yesterday, and he's like, sometimes I feel like I have to be a certain way, but at home, I'm a little bit more, this way. And I said, look, I said, be you all the time. It's important to be you all the time, because that's who people are gonna fall in love with. You people are gonna connect with you, not your character, not your facade. They're gonna connect with you. And so when I meet people, yes, my demeanor might change a little bit, but I think that's also in a big way a respect for that person, and also trying to make a connection at their level rather than making the connection at my level. I need to meet them where they are. And then as they continue to get to know me, we kind of grow together in that relationship. And I can definitely remember, we would call it the instructor voice or the instructor stance when we were on the mat, because we would stand a certain way and we would talk a certain way. And I always thought that was a little bit robotic, but that's all I knew in the beginning. So that's what I tried to emulate. But once I really found that I was being myself, I was having fun, I was enjoying it, people around me started to enjoy it even more. They started to bond with me in a different way. So I think, again, authenticity is super important in business and life. Everybody posts their wins on Facebook or Instagram, but how about posting your losses? Because people learn from those. People, when they see the real you, there's a little less of that. I don't know, people look at Facebook and they think my life talking about the word should be like that, because they're comparing to what they see instead of just trying to relate, right? There's a big difference between comparing each other and relating to one another. So I think that authenticity is what helps us relate to each other a little bit better.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Now, I do not personally think in terms of wins and losses anymore. But I know what you mean, and I don't reject it. It's just like I look at it a little bit differently now. I look at it as an experience, right?
Sure.
And that allows me to really look at it from a different perspective and say, okay, what's in that experience for me, and how can I not just maybe use it as an opportunity or a stepping stone, as you always say, but also just to really go to a deeper level of it sometimes, and seriously, even if it's not obvious that there is even anything in it for me, there's always something, because I personally believe we create all our reality, right? So then I no longer have actually the excuse of saying, okay, somebody put that in my path. I probably put it in my path myself. So now I'm taking responsibility. I know there are different perspectives. I'm not saying that has to be yours, Jason, at all.
Right.
It's just like, there's this concept of wins and losses. I'm letting that go a little bit in my life. Sometimes, for the lack of a better word, I would still say, like, I had this whatever financial loss in the past. But yeah, so I'm just thinking a lot about these concepts lately, and even more than already before, because I've always thought about words a lot, because I've learned foreign languages, right? So that's when you automatically start thinking about vocabulary more and how we use it. However, yeah, but I know what you mean. Of course, don't just show your so-called successes, but also show other people that you're real, and that not every day is like the woo super high, right? Or not
Right.
every day is where you bring in a ton of money or whatever it is for everybody. Yeah. I definitely also wanted to show that in my books, my book, Living My Freaking Amazing Life, that it wasn't an uphill path all the time. And there were actually some pretty steep downhill movements at some point.
Right.
And then the important thing is, though, to just be able to look at it and just, and then this perspective has helped me, I have to say, because then I look at it and say, okay, well, what's in that for me, and how can I use this, and what can I allow myself to see that I'm not seeing right now, right?
Right. And whether you call it wins or losses, or
Yeah.
you talk about everything as an experience, every one of those is a learning experience, right? On the mat, something that's pretty easy to see is if you're faced with breaking a board and you hit the board and you don't break the board, well, you have to learn from that, adapt from that, make an adjustment from that. And it might take 5 tries, it might take 100 tries. But as long as you keep going, eventually you're going to have the breakthrough. And that's where, that is a whole new experience. That shows you something. So I think, again, a good sparring match, right? You face someone that way outclasses you, right? It's still going to be a learning experience. You face someone that you can beat, it's still a learning experience. So I agree with that part 100%.
Yeah, and there's always like the two things, right? That's a practical learning that we can have, and then there's the potential internal stuff that we might to work on first, so
Mm-hmm.
and actually get to that next step in the practical experience. Even if we repeat something all the time, sometimes and I'm not specifically talking about martial arts here right now, right? But it could be a business, whatever, and we were repeating the same thing. Yes, practice helps us maybe advance, but we could also repeat the not so beneficial thing 1,000 times,
That's
or
right.
do it in a way that's not bringing us forward, or else we could do exactly the right thing, but there's something internally that's just really keeping us from seeing that result. And I've seen that over and over with my clients and also with myself, right? Where you gotta address that first so that you can then get to that next level. And with your board, that is also a perfect example for that, probably, because if you believe very firmly that you cannot do it, then
That's right.
hello, right?
The first step in breaking a board, as I was talking about, the words before, and we were talking about discipline being one of those words, the very first word that I teach them is confidence. If you don't believe you can do it, you'll never achieve it. So you have to believe it to achieve it. So yeah, I mean, there's so many lessons. I could go on and on about lessons with board breaking and how that applies to life. But you're right. You can practice something 1,000 times, and depending on how you're practicing or what your mindset is when you're practicing, you could be going completely in the wrong direction. And the more you practice it that way, the further you're getting from your goal. So practicing correctly 1,000 times, or practicing with the right mindset, is going to help you get closer. But as we set goals in business, in life, in martial arts, fitness, whatever, it's never a straight line. It's always this line that makes lots of, crazy lines, up, down, sideways, backwards. It's never a straight line to success.
Yeah. And oftentimes in business, it's also the energetics. If you want to, for example, attract a certain clientele and you're not putting out those energetics, then it's not going to work either. Or you are maybe under pressure to have it happen, right? So there's so much to this. But I would love to see an article one day, Jason, about the board lessons, the board thing that goes in there. So that would be definitely a great article for to be published, I think.
I may actually have one. I know that I used to do a lot of writing for a martial arts publication. And so I may actually have that article somewhere. I'll have to look for it.
Yeah, maybe we can just add it as a link to the
Yeah,
description when it comes up. And also, maybe it's time to republish it on social media. Who knows?
there you go.
Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about your community leadership. Okay,
Mhm.
so you told me that you also have a pretty, yeah, important role there.
Mhm.
So how has your experience as you also a martial arts business consultant? So how has that experience as a martial arts business consultant informed your approach to community leadership?
Well, so, just backstory, right? I opened my business at 19 years old. I had zero business experience. I had some martial arts experience at that time and teaching for a few years, but I really truly didn't know anything about the business. It was more the passion that was what was driving me. And so I love to teach. I love martial arts. And I figured if I keep loving it, like I can't be unsuccessful at this. It's got to work, right? And so we opened a school, and things were going well. I mean, we made a profit, but it wasn't at a level where by the time my daughter was born, that I think that was going to sustain what our hopes and dreams and goals were going to be. And so at the suggestion of Mr. Mark Cox, you may know, he suggested that I go to a certain event in Las Vegas, and it was a martial arts convention. And at that convention, I met who became my business mentor, Mike Metzger. And, I sat in a seminar for about an hour and listened to how he thought a martial arts school could run and be even more profitable, and at the same time have more of an impact in your community. Because at the end of the day, a martial arts school has the potential to be such a huge impact in any community. But if your business is not successful, or you're not able to focus on anything other than running the business, then I can't have that impact. So it was really intriguing to find out how I could change our business, how we could improve some things. And so taking on a mentor for me was like one of the biggest steps of getting better at business. But also, listen, every professional player in the major league, the NFL, NBA, doesn't matter. Every professional athlete has a coach, and every person with a business should have a coach. Everybody needs a mentor, because how do you pour into someone else if you don't have someone pouring into you? And so this mentor helped me to understand how to run a more efficient school. And with that, I was finding that I was starting to hire staff to teach. And so now I was able to work on the business and not work in the business. And so I was able to now get out into our community. And it started really small. One of the first things that we did early on was we did a kickathon that raised money, that we used the money to purchase food, and that food created baskets for Thanksgiving. It was one of the very first, really deep community service projects that we did. And then from there, it just continued on and on. When our kids were born, my wife was really involved in, being team mom. I was the coach. The kids were playing. Of course, teams always need sponsorships, so we started sponsoring teams. Team mom for my wife led to roles on the board of directors, and of course, I was always, wanting to be supportive and be there as well. So we started getting involved in the youth sports. Then they went into the middle school and high school, and it just, as our kids grew older, they were kind of our way of finding how to help. Because I think early on, I didn't even know where to start. I remember joining the Chamber of Commerce when I first opened my business, and had no idea what a Chamber of Commerce does, or who the people were. Or I looked around, and I was, 19 at the time, and I was like, I don't fit here. This is not, I don't know what to do. So I actually left. And funny enough, now here I am, the chamber board of directors chairman for the last couple of years. And, just getting involved with, we live in a small town, so it's, 36,000 people. And, where everybody knows everybody, and one thing leads to another, and we're helping with one thing, we're helping with 10 things. And so this is where it all comes back, is that I realized that the more we're helping in our community, the more it benefits our own children early on, but now the kids that are growing up in our school. When we sponsor a team, it helps support one of our students. When we go and volunteer at an event, we see all our students there and they feel the support from us. And for a city that has been really good to us, where we've been able to grow and our business thrive since 1994, 31 years we've been in business, and to be able to give back to all that we've been giving, I think it feels good, right? It feels good to be able to give back, because sometimes we don't get that chance to do it.
Okay, yeah. And you're talking about a small town. I think it's funny how it's always relative, right? I grew up in a village with 10 houses at the time.
That's a little smaller than where I live.
Right. It has grown by at least 100%. Hey. So, yeah. And did you know that I also owned brick and mortar businesses in Argentina and Brazil?
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So I owned a bed and breakfast in Argentina.
Wow.
While. And I owned actually a dance and wellness center in Brazil. The only thing that was in Rio de Janeiro. The only thing is I I did business for part of the business with a fraudulent business partner, so that didn't last that long, and it was a pretty long cleanup phase. but yeah, but it was fun, and the bed and breakfast was really successful. It was, the way I did it is I started out just like you said. The community is really important. I went to I made friends with other bed and breakfasts. At the time, it was like the tourism in Argentina was booming because it was cheap, and it was there were lots of tourists. There were about a little over 40 bed and breakfasts in Buenos Aires, and I made friends with those around me, and so we started exchanging, basically passing each other customers
Right.
when we were full, right? And that's how. The first customers I actually got at a milonga. That's a place where you dance tango, and I went there and I made little flyers and stuff. So a group came to my house and they stayed for a week or so. They were my very first guests, and then a lot of my customers actually came from that community of other bed and breakfast owners.
Well, and I mean, that isn't that the case in every business and in every situation, that the relationships that you build are what help you to thrive, right?
Mm-hmm.
And help you to be more involved. I mean, when I started out, I didn't really know who to talk to, but once I met one person that kind of knew, they introduced me to the next person and the
Mm-hmm.
next person, and before you know it, now we're the people that are connecting and introducing people. So yeah, it's just relationships and the connections that we build in our business and in our community. It's just a benefit to all.
Right. Yeah. So, and so, what are strategies that you would potentially recommend to small business owners who want to become more involved and connected with their communities?
Well, I can only speak for my area and where I
Yep.
live, because I don't know about anything I haven't had a business in other countries like you have. But I think going in with the mindset that I think the very first thing, and this is what I had to learn early, was going in the mindset of giving and serving versus asking and taking, right? When I first started my business, I would always kind of walk into another business, and I would ask them if I could leave a flyer or cards or something, and please promote me, is how I approached it, right? And now it's very different. I would walk into a business and say, hey, how can I partner with you to help your business, and we can work together? So I think that was a huge mind shift, and just a different way of looking at it. But I mean, be willing to give, be willing to serve. Look for the smallest of opportunities. For us, it started with a food bank. It started with the food pantry. But then that led to other opportunities. Look for service organizations to join and get involved. I mean, so there's a lot of different ways to get involved. For businesses, your chamber of commerce is a great way to network and meet other people, because at the end of the day, the more people you meet and interact with, the more opportunities are going to come up. So I would say that those would be the first few ways to get involved right out of the gate.
Okay. And I have one last question. I know we've been talking for a long time.
No problem.
In what ways do you believe martial arts training can foster a sense of community among the individuals that do it?
Well, I love that. I love that you asked that question, because that's something that is one of our core values in our school, is community and building that community. Now, this is not true with all martial arts. This is not true with all fitness gyms. It's not true for all dance schools. I mean, some places you will sign up, you are a member, you may attend classes, you attend class and you go home. And I think it all goes back once again to building relationships. If my student walks in the door, they check in, they take class, they go home, if they really love it, they'll stay for a little while. But if that student walks in and I have created a connection with that student, I've gotten to know that, what does that student do outside of the karate school? Do they play soccer? Do they play football? Are they a Boy Scout, a Girl Scout? What do mom and dad do for a living? What football team does mom or dad like? The more I get to know about them, and the more that we can connect on a deeper level, even when they're not loving martial arts, they're going to keep coming back for me, my instructors, or the people. And I really like to connect all of our students. So not only do I like to have that connection with each one of my students, I want to create opportunities for our students to have connections with each other. Anybody that's ever gone off to a summer camp or a special seminar, and you spent 6 or 8 hours with someone, you feel like you just, created the best friend in the world, right? And so we have parents' night outs at our school, we have day camps at our school, we have seminars at our school, we have buddy days. So I create a lot of opportunities to foster the relationships within the students, and to bring their friends into the school, and then also to get their parents involved. I mean, we pride ourselves on being a family school, not just a martial arts school. We're a family self-defense center. I want the whole family to be safe, not just the child that they signed up. How can we get mom or dad on the mat training? How can we get siblings on the mat training? So we create opportunities where they can train together. We create certain classes. Mother's Day is coming up. We got a big Mother's Day class tomorrow, where we'll probably have 50 moms come out and join their kids on the mat. And how much of an experience they're going to have on the mat that they're going to remember for a long time. We're going to take pictures of everybody, and from year to year, they see the picture from last time, how old their child was then, or what belt they were then, and those memories. But the experience of training together and bringing people together, I think is so important. And for me, I have always worked to create a family atmosphere in our school. Even though we're not related by blood, we're related by martial arts.
Okay. Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that. That sounds beautiful. Yeah, so that's it for me. If you'd like to absolutely add anything, then this is your chance.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity and thanks for all the really great questions. I'm super passionate about martial arts and teaching martial arts. Martial arts has become my vehicle for helping people learn how to become leaders. One of my favorite classes now that I'm able to focus in on it a little bit more is teaching our students how to teach or how to be a leader, not only in the school, but out of the school and in the community. And so we involve and engage them in community service events quite often. So that's something that, we're cultivating that at an early age. So I love teaching that leadership class. We didn't talk about it a lot, but, professional wrestling was another one of the things that actually was an experience that I was able to have because of martial arts. I had a dream of being a pro wrestler when I was a kid. And at 38 years old, I had the opportunity to go and train. And so I like to remind everybody with that it's never too late to chase your dreams. It's never too late to go after something. If you've tried it before, try it again. If you failed at it before, try again. If you didn't think it was possible, just get after it. And, I was able to live my dream. And I think you can too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us here today, Jason.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks to everyone for tuning in. If you found value, be generous and share this episode with your friends. As you can see, we have all sorts of different topics that are all relevant for leadership. So see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to Rise to Lead. Keep shining your light, standing up for what's right, and inspiring others to step into their brilliance. If you like this episode, please give it a 5-star rating and subscribe to the Rise to Lead podcast on your preferred podcast app. Until next time, it's Regina Huber, and in the meantime, remember to rise to lead.